At 2247 local time, the Sea of Japan, 200 nautical miles southwest of the Korean peninsula coast, is doing what it does at this hour in November, existing in a state of complete operational darkness that satellite imagery describes as politically contested and that mariners describe as cold. The surface temperature is 11 degrees Celsius. The swell is 1.5 meters from the northwest, consistent and unremarkable. The sky is overcast, which means the usual navigation starfield is unavailable, which means the watched sections aboard every vessel in this part of the ocean are relying on their instruments rather than their windows, which is how professional mariners operate when instruments and windows disagree, because instruments are more accurate and windows are more comfortable. And the Sea of Japan in November is not interested in anyone's comfort. At 2247, two vessels are coordinating across a secure communications channel that routes through a satellite relay over the Pacific and arrives at both receivers simultaneously, with a latency of approximately 340 milliseconds, which is fast enough for tactical coordination and slow enough that both watch sections have learned to account for it when timing is operationally important. One vessel is USS Mustin, hull number DDG-89, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating under 7th Fleet orders. The other is JS Atago, hull number DDG-177, a Congo-class Aegis guided missile destroyer of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, operating in its home waters under its own operational authority. Coordinating with USS Mustin through the bilateral ASW coordination framework that the U.S.-Japan alliance has been refining since the 1960s and that has reached, over 6 decades, the specific quality of an operational relationship that does not require explaining things that have already been understood for years. The coordination at 2247 was about a submarine, not a confirmed submarine, a probable submarine. The distinction matters in anti-submarine warfare the way it matters in most professional disciplines where acting on a probable rather than a confirmed leads to consequences that require more paperwork than the confirmation would have. The datum had been established at 1931, 3 hours and 16 minutes earlier, by a P-3C Orion of the JMSDF's Fleet Air Wing, conducting its standard night patrol of the Central Sea of Japan. The P-3C's acoustic sensors had acquired a brief narrowband tonal at 1928, prosecuted it with 4 sonobuoys, and produced a contact that the P-3C's acoustic coordinator had assessed as probable submarine before the fuel state required him to depart the datum area at 2047. The tonal's frequency, 41 Hz, was consistent with the acoustic library entry for the Sinpo-class submarine's auxiliary machinery, which is an entry that the U.S.-Japan bilateral acoustic intelligence community has been building since 2015, and that is, relative to most North Korean submarine acoustic entries, relatively well populated because the Sinpo-class is the platform that the intelligence community has prioritized for collection above all other Korean People's Army-Navy submarine assets. The reason for that priority is the Sinpo-class's primary mission, which is not the same as the missions of the patrol submarines and torpedo boats that constitute most of the KPAN's inventory. The Sinpo-class is a ballistic missile submarine, the platform from which North Korea has been attempting, since approximately 2015, to develop an operational submarine-launched ballistic missile capability. The Pukguksong SLBM that the Sinpo carries has been tested on multiple occasions, with results that the international community is characterized as a genuine developmental program rather than a demonstration program, which is the difference between a country that is building the capability and a country that is trying to look like it has the capability. North Korea is building the capability. The pace is slower than the U.S.-Japan alliance would prefer, and the technical reliability of the current SLBM remains a subject of active assessment. And the Sinpo herself is not what the alliance would describe as a modern submarine by any metric except the one that matters most in the Sea of Japan at 2247, which is whether she is there. She was there. The 41 Hertz tonal at 1928 said so. 3 hours and 16 minutes of datum age said she had been somewhere within an approximately 48 nautical mile radius of the original position since then, moving at whatever speed a Sinpo-class submarine moves when it has a mission in the Sea of Japan and is aware, at some level of operational probability, that the other side is looking for it. USS Mustin and JS Atago had arrived at their coordinated prosecution positions at 21:15. The coordination had been established at 1955, 24 minutes after the P-3C's datum report, through the standard bilateral ASW notification channel that the alliance maintains precisely for this category of event. JS Atago had been operating in this area on its own training schedule. The notification had converted a training schedule into an operational tasking in the specific way that alliance structures allow one member's detection to become another member's prosecution asset within minutes. This is what the 60-year relationship produces. Not just shared information, shared positioning, shared timing, shared acoustic picture, maintained via the data exchange link that the two ships' Aegis systems run continuously when they are operating in coordination, producing a common tactical picture that neither ship's organic sensors could produce alone. Here is the vulnerability that made the prosecution complicated in a way that the datum alone did not communicate. The Sinpo-class submarine is not the most capable platform in the KPAN's inventory by the metrics that surface ship and aviation ASW operators use to measure submarines. It is relatively slow, relatively noisy compared to modern submarines, and relatively shallow diving. These are genuinely accurate statements. What they do not capture is the specific acoustic environment of the Central Sea of Japan in November, which provides to a shallow diving, relatively noisy submarine operating at slow speed a specific acoustic concealment mechanism that has nothing to do with the submarine's own acoustic characteristics. It is a concealment mechanism provided by the geography. The Central Sea of Japan has, at depths between 50 and 150 meters, a persistent acoustic duct, a layer in which sound propagation is strongly favored over horizontal distances rather than vertical ones, creating a zone where acoustic energy travels efficiently in the horizontal plane and is refracted away from both the surface and the seafloor. A submarine operating within this duct at slow speed produces a signature that propagates horizontally within the duct rather than upward towards surface sensors. The sonobuoys that had located the P-3C's tonal at 1928 were deployed at a depth that happened to intersect the duct boundary. The two subsequent buoys had not intersected it. The prosecution had lost the contact not because the Sinpo had accelerated or maneuvered, but because the acoustic duct had moved the energy away from the sensors. This is the vulnerability, not the submarine's capability. The environment's assistance to the submarine, provided entirely without the submarine's knowledge or control, in the form of a propagation layer that the Sea of Japan maintains in November with the indifference of a geological feature that has no operational allegiances. USS Mustin's SQS-53C hull-mounted sonar and JS Atago's OQS-5 bow sonar were both operating. The OQS-5 is Japan's primary hull-mounted sonar system domestically developed and specifically optimized for the acoustic environment of the waters around the Japanese archipelago, which includes the Sea of Japan and its specific propagation characteristics. This optimization is not accidental. Japan has been building sonars for the Sea of Japan for 60 years and has developed in that time a specific expertise in the acoustic environment that complements rather than duplicates the U.S. Navy's equipment. The Alliance's two sonar systems, operated in coordination, cover different aspects of the acoustic picture in ways that a single system cannot. At 2219, JS Atago's OQS-5 produced a contact, not the 41 Hz tonal from the P-3C's original detection. A different frequency, 67 Hz, consistent with a different auxiliary system, also in the Sinpo's acoustic library entry, also assessed as submarine consistent. The contact was brief, 18 seconds, before the duck boundary shifted again and the signal degraded. But 18 seconds is enough for a cross-bearing. USS Mustin's SQS-53C had not acquired the contact at 2219. USS Mustin had been approximately 12 nautical miles from the contact position. JS Atago had been approximately 8 nautical miles. The bearing from Atago and the bearing from Mustin's sonar, which had acquired a possible contact at the same time that was below its own classification threshold, but was nonetheless a bearing, produced a cross-bearing solution that the two ships' Aegis systems computed simultaneously within 11 seconds of the contact's acquisition, position solution. Probability ellipse of approximately 8 nautical miles by 4 nautical miles at a position 93 nautical miles from the last datum. The Sinpo had moved west-southwest at an assessed average speed of 4.5 knots over 3 hours and 16 minutes, west-southwest toward the Korean Peninsula coast. The ASW coordinator on USS Mustin called the result to the watch officer. The watch officer called the commanding officer. The commanding officer was in CIC at 2221. He looked at the solution. He looked at the Sinpo's assessed course, west-southwest toward the coast. He looked at the depth chart. The Sinpo's assessed position was over water approximately 220 meters deep, which is consistent with a Sinpo-class submarine at or below its operating depth. He looked at the bilateral coordination net, where J.S. Atago's commanding officer was looking at the same picture from 8 nautical miles to the northwest. Coordination recommendation, the commanding officer said to the ASW coordinator. Recommend cooperative prosecution, sir. Mustin takes the eastern barrier, Atago takes the western barrier, with P-3C requested for additional buoy coverage on the southern sector. The Sinpo's assessed course puts it in the southern sector within approximately 90 minutes at current speed. P-3C availability? Fleet Air Wing has a P-3C available from Atsugi. Transit time to the datum area, approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. 1 hour and 10 minutes of transit. 90 minutes of assessment before the Sinpo reached the southern sector. 20-minute buffer. The commanding officer noted this. He coordinated with J.S. Atago's commanding officer on the secure link, which the 340 millisecond latency made slightly more deliberate than a face-to-face conversation, and considerably more deliberate than the 20-second conversations that tactical situations sometimes require. They agreed on the barrier positioning. They agreed on the P-3C request. They agreed on the prosecution timeline and the reporting protocol for contacts, including the specific threshold at which the prosecution would be reported to JMSDF headquarters and 7th Fleet simultaneously. The P-3C request went to Fleet Air Wing Atsugi at 2228. The P-3C was airborne at 2304 and arrived in the datum area at 0013. The sonobuoy deployment began at 017, focused on the southern sector based on the two-ship solution and the Sinpo's assessed course. At 031, the P-3C's acoustic processor produced a contact. The 41 Hz tonal again, the same frequency as the original detection at 1928, 5 hours and 3 minutes earlier, now in a different buoy and at a bearing consistent with the two-ship solution from 2219. The acoustic coordinator identified the frequency immediately. The tonal was present for 47 seconds before it degraded, which was 47 more seconds than any previous contact in the prosecution had lasted. 47 seconds produced a position solution of approximately 3 nautical miles uncertainty, at a position that was 108 nautical miles west-southwest of the original datum. 108 nautical miles in 5 hours and 3 minutes. Average speed, 4.3 knots, west-southwest. The Sinpo was moving toward the Korean peninsula coast at a speed consistent with its assessed submerged endurance and consistent with the operational pattern that the intelligence community had associated with Sinpo operations when the submarine was in a transit posture rather than a missile test posture. The distinction between transit and test posture was operationally significant. In test posture, the Sinpo maintains a relatively stable position and depth consistent with SLBM preparation. In transit posture, it moves. The Sinpo was moving. "Transit or test posture?" the commanding officer asked the ASW coordinator. "Transit, sir." The speed and course are consistent with a return transit toward the Sinpo's base. The position is moving progressively toward the North Korean coast. A pause. The course is not consistent with a firing position for the assessed SLBM ranges. Not consistent with a firing position. The Sinpo was not preparing to launch. It was going home. The intelligence significance of this assessment, that the submarine had been in the Central Sea of Japan for an assessed period, consistent with a maritime operation schedule, and was now returning, would be noted in the contact report alongside the acoustic characterization data and the track history. The pattern of operations was itself an intelligence product. Understanding when the Sinpo goes out and when it comes back, what course it runs, what depth it maintains, what acoustic signature it produces at various speeds. All of this is the intelligence picture that the Alliance has been building since 2015, and that tonight's prosecution had contributed to in the specific way that operational contacts contribute to intelligence pictures, through direct, primary data observation rather than assessment and modeling. At 044, the P-3C coordinator transmitted the contact report to both the Fleet Air Wing Atsugi Operations Center and to USS Mustin, which forwarded it to JS Atago and to 7th Fleet. The report included the position solution, the assessed course and speed, the acoustic tonal frequencies from all 3 contact events, the timing of each contact, and the assessment that the Sinpo was in transit rather than test posture. The report was transmitted in the format that the bilateral ASW coordination framework specifies, which means that the JMSDF's relevant headquarters received it simultaneously with 7th Fleet rather than sequentially, which is what 60 years of relationship building produces at the operational level. The intelligence officer on USS Mustin, reviewing the contact report before transmission, added a technical note. The note described the difference between the 1928 41 Hz detection and the 1967 Hz detection and the 31 41 Hz reacquisition. The 41 Hz tonal was the auxiliary system that the acoustic library had been tracking since 2015. The 67 Hz tonal was a different system, one that the library had a less complete entry for based on a single previous collection event in 2021. Tonight's 67 Hz contact had lasted 18 seconds, compared to the 2021 event's 9 seconds. The character of the tonal, its frequency stability, its amplitude variation, Its relationship to the operational pattern of the auxiliary system it represented was now better characterized than before. The library entry would be updated. The update would be shared with the JMSDF under the Bilateral Technical Intelligence Exchange Protocol. Both sides get the update. This is also what 60 years of relationship building produces. What does the 67 Hertz characterization tell us? The commanding officer asked the intelligence officer. It's the cooling system for the missile compartment's power conditioning unit, sir. The previous entry was speculative on that identification. Single event, too brief to characterize the operational pattern. Tonight's 18-second contact, at this point in the transit, tells us the power conditioning system was active during a return transit phase. The intelligence officer looked at the contact log. That's operationally significant. The system wouldn't be running unless the missile compartment was maintaining a specific power state. We can infer the power state from the cooling requirement. Can we infer whether the SLBM was fully operational? Not from tonight's data alone, sir. But the running state of the power conditioning cooling system is a new data point for the assessment model. The analyst community will have opinions about it. A pause. Complicated ones, probably. The intelligence officer made a note. The note was the kind of note that produces complicated opinions in analyst communities, which is the kind of note that moves an assessment from probable to assessed, and from assessed to confirmed over the slow accumulation of primary data events that operational contacts produce. At 1:17, the P-3C reached its fuel threshold and began its return to Atsugi. The prosecution had been running for 5 hours and 46 minutes from the original datum. The Sinpo's track had been established across 3 separate acoustic contacts, providing a course and speed history consistent with a return transit. The acoustic library had been updated with the 67 Hz characterization and the improved 41 Hz amplitude data from the 47-second contact. The power conditioning system inference was in the technical note. All of it was in the transmission that left USS Mustin's data link at 1:22 and reached 7th Fleet JMSDF headquarters and the relevant intelligence agencies simultaneously. USS Mustin and JS Atago maintained their barrier positions until 2:30, when the Sinpo's assessed position was close enough to North Korean territorial waters that the prosecution became a monitoring activity rather than an active ASW operation. At 2:30, USS Mustin reported to 7th Fleet that the contact had tracked to within estimated territorial waters proximity and was no longer being actively prosecuted. JS Atago reported the same to JMSDF headquarters. Both reports were filed simultaneously, per protocol, in the same standardized format that the bilateral coordination framework specifies. The Korean Central News Agency published nothing about submarine operations in the Sea of Japan because the Korean Central News Agency does not publish anything about submarine operations in the Sea of Japan. The Sinpo-class submarine's operational schedule is not a subject for public discussion in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The submarine's return to its base would not be announced. Its departure would not be announced. Its operational history in the Sea of Japan, now including tonight's contact track, the acoustic signature characterizations, the course and speed history, and the power conditioning system inference, would not be discussed because the DPRK's position on its submarine force is that it exists and is capable and is operated with revolutionary dedication, and specific operational details do not improve this narrative and potentially diminish it. What the KCNA would eventually say, if pressed, was that the sacred waters of the Korean People's Sovereign Sea are patrolled continuously by the heroic naval forces of the Korean People's Army, and the imperialist enemy's provocative surveillance operations are impotent in the face of the DPRK's operational security. This statement would be delivered with conviction. USS Mustin's operational log for the period read, 1931 to 0230, cooperative ASW prosecution with JS Atago, DDG 177. JMSDF P-3C datum established 1931. Contact events, P-3C 1928, Atago OQS-5, 2219, P-3C 0031. Track history established, assessed Sinpo-class in return transit. Acoustic characterizations transmitted 7th Fleet and JMSDF HQ 122. Prosecution concluded 2:30 at territorial waters proximity. The intelligence annex was 9 pages. The 9th page was the power conditioning system technical note. All 9 pages were distributed to U.S. and Japanese ASW-capable platforms in the Western Pacific. The watch section, briefing at 600 aboard USS Mustin, which was the first briefing the incoming watch section received, included a summary of the night's prosecution. The incoming watch officer read it with the attention of a professional who understands that the submarine is going to come out again, and that when it comes out again, the acoustic library will be slightly better prepared, and the bilateral coordination will be slightly more practiced, and the power conditioning system inference will have been either confirmed or revised by the analyst community, and the prosecution will start from a slightly better position than it started from last night. This is how the picture builds. Not from a single dramatic event, but from the accumulation of contact events, each one adding to what the previous ones established, each one starting from a slightly better position than the last. The Sinpo has been doing this for 9 years. The bilateral prosecution framework has been doing it for longer. The direction of that accumulation is consistent. J.S. Atago's watch section conducted the same briefing, the same 9 pages, the same technical note, the same starting position for the next prosecution. 2 ships, 1 picture, 60 years of the relationship that produces it. Bye for now.